I'm not sure I can follow that great music. That was really fabulous. And thank you to Genesis, I suspect was behind that. It really is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this special event, which is our 10th annual Civic Scholars IdeaBounce. As Teresa said in an email today, it's a wonderful occasion, and we hope it's our last virtual Civic Scholars IdeaBounce, and that we have the opportunity to be together in person at future events. I'm here to just tell you a little bit about the Gephardt Institute and introduce our program tonight. My name is Stephanie Kurtzman, and it's my honor to serve as the director for the Gephardt Institute for Civic and Community Engagement here at Washington University. A bit of an overview of the Gephardt Institute for those of you who are less familiar with us. Our focus is on, excuse me, my notes moved around for a second there. Our focus is on educating students for lifelong civic engagement. This can look a lot of different ways. This can show up in students' academic lives, their personal lives, or their professional pursuits. And it encompasses all different forms of engagement. That could be political and policy change, obviously on our mind right now with the election next week, advocacy and activism. It could look like corporate social responsibility or philanthropy, civic dialogue, neighborhood leadership, community organizing, and the list goes on. But at its root, we're cultivating an ethic of civic engagement, a lifelong commitment to informed and active involvement in civic life. And we're cultivating civic leadership in all spheres of public life, a lifelong commitment to leading change that supports thriving communities and a thriving democracy. And we do that through the values of inquiry, empathy, integrity, collaboration, equity, and action. The civic scholars that we are honored to work with are exemplars of this vision at the Gephardt Institute. They are up to 18 students per year who participate in a 2-year academic program and a range of immersive experiences. One key component of the Civic Scholars experience is the Civic Summer, when each student receives a $5,000 stipend to pursue a civic project or partnership. That they are focused on an issue that they're passionate about, and that might take place in any community around the globe. Of course, with the current pandemic environment, sometimes that might be remote. So tonight is our 10th annual IdeaBounce, when our junior cohort from the junior class of 17 students will share their visions with you for their civic summers. This is our opportunity as guests. We have a threefold opportunity. The first is just to be inspired. I know that I'm looking for reasons for hope right now during an extremely challenging time in our nation and our world. And I believe that all of us will find hope in these remarkable rising leaders. Number two is we have the opportunity to show our support. Our students are testing out their ideas publicly, and they'll continue to take shape over the coming months. And our third opportunity is to share ideas, leads, and feedback with our students. This could be a suggestion, it could be an article, it could be a person or an organization you recommend they connect with, or it might just be a vote of confidence as they go forward. Before we hear from our 10th cohort of Civic Scholars, I do want to take a moment to thank many of the people who have made this program possible, as we have supported 121 Civic Scholars students and alumni through this very special program. It's hard for me to see on Zoom, so I really hope that I don't miss anybody who's joined us and I haven't seen them yet. I want to first recognize Bob Virgil, who helped us propel this vision for the program from the earliest days and the earliest concept of the Civic Scholars program, and was instrumental in our fundraising efforts. We have a number of generous donors who support our Civic Scholars, and I'd like to call your attention to them, whether they've been able to join us or not. Bob Fox and Maxine Clark from St. Louis, Mickey and Debbie Stern from Detroit, Matt Seiden and Wendy Weil from New York, Joe Marcus and Margie Olson from St. Louis, Laura and David Kleinhandler from New York, John and Crystal Berline from St. Louis, and Mary and Tom Stillman from St. Louis. I also want to recognize our Civic Scholar alumni. That's one benefit of our virtual program tonight, is that I see people zooming in from all around the country and maybe even the world. And our Civic Scholar alumni also provide generous financial support to the program to pay it forward to the cohorts who follow them. And they form a beautiful network of support and wisdom and community that's one of the very special facets of the Civic Scholars community, which might even be called a Civic Scholars family. I'd like to make sure everybody knows that among us is Colleen Waterman, our Director of Development, who is instrumental in making sure that we have the financial resources necessary to offer transformative programs like the Civic Scholars program. And finally, I want to recognize our past and current Gephardt Institute staff who've been instrumental in both developing and shaping this very special program. I'd like to call your attention, if they're in the room again or not, to Jenny Harpring, Robin Hattori, Amanda Moore McBride, Luann Oros, Genesis Steele, and a person you'll hear from momentarily, Teresa Kuo, who is our exceptional, passionate, and compassionate leader of this program. And finally, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. Among us, we have friends, family, and fan clubs. We have alumni. We have mentors, advisors, instructors, and collaborators. We have community partners. We have Gephardt Institute supporters. And all of us are here to invest in the vision of young people who right now, more than ever before, are putting hope above fear and who are putting action over paralysis, in acting on their visions for a world that is more just, more equitable, more peaceful, and safe for all. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dwayne James, who co-instructs this cohort of students with Teresa. In his day job, when he's not working with our Civic Scholars, Dwayne serves as the County Engagement Specialist in Community Economic Development with the University of Missouri Extension in St. Louis County. Dwayne?
Thank you for that introduction. So it's my pleasure to be a part of this year's cohort of Civic Scholars. And I just want to say that I've only been with them for a short time, but I'm just in awe. I'm amazed, I'm excited. The passion, the energy, the excitement, the intelligence, the connections that they have with community, what they want to do to support community just inspires me to continue to support, help, and develop those connections and develop that network so they can do that work in the space that they're in right now. And so it's always the media that, and the information that we hear about what's not happening, but to be in a space where we're actually hearing things that are happening and want to happen and continue to happen just gives me the excitement and the joy to be with this year's cohort and helping them to basically see their ideas that you're going to hear and make that into reality. So I want you to sit back, enjoy the ride. I've heard just a small tidbit of what they're going to present, and I will just tell you that it is going to be a very exciting evening tonight. And I'm just excited to be a part of this wonderful opportunity. And of course, I'm excited to be a co-facilitator with Teresa. And so, Teresa, thank you for allowing me to be a co-facilitator in this space. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
So thank you to Dwayne. And I also want to just take a moment to thank our parents who are in the room with us. Another exciting thing about being able to do this virtually is to welcome so many families. And as we get to connect, hopefully in person at graduation, I just want to say thank you now, and to say you have so much to be proud of in your children. They have already blown us away and have impressed us so much. And so I'm really looking forward to the growth and this journey with them over the next year and a half. So you get to witness and bear witness to and be a part of one of the first major components of their Civic Scholars experience to really just open the door to resources and support for their development as civic agents. We hope that all of you in the audience can be that for our scholars, whether you come as a donor, as a supporter, as a guest lecturer, as a parent. All of us have valuable insights and connections that we can share with our students to help them think a little bit differently about how they're approaching their civic and community work. The students who are presenting today are juniors in our Civic Scholars program who began the program just this semester. They're at the very beginning stages of their Civic Summer development. And while some of them are presenting on things that they've been consistently sharing with us, others are in phases of emergence, of learning new things and thinking about new ideas to respond to the call of this current moment. Tonight, they'll be sharing those ideas publicly for the first time with all of you in the format of an idea bounce. For those of you who are thinking, what is an idea bounce? What is this strange title? It's actually a flagship program of the Scandalera Center. And I want to acknowledge we have a new colleague in the audience from the Scandalera Center who will be managing their idea bounce program. So thank you for being with us tonight. And so it's been a program since 2005, and it's an online platform, but also has events that helps early stage entrepreneurs connect with each other, connect with resources and mentors to help them move their ideas forward. In many ways, our civic scholars are really exhibiting that entrepreneurial spirit as well, looking to implement ideas that work to address some of our most complex civic and community challenges. And so to do that, again, they need your support and guidance and partnership and mentorship to bring those ideas to life or advance the efforts that are already happening in and throughout community. The Scandalera Center has graciously allowed our civic scholars to capture their ideas utilizing the same idea bounce concept. And we're so appreciative because I think it helps give a quick clip of what they're doing. So each of them have prepared a 2-minute idea bounce about their civic passions and interests and look forward to connecting with you afterward to get support on those ideas moving forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to invite each of our students in succession to share their idea. Genesis is going to drop into the chat a link to the program, and so you can follow along in order of our students. We'll be going alphabetical by last name. So Emily, this is your warning. You'll be up first. There'll be no gaps between the presentations, and after all of the students have presented, we're going to invite you to meet and talk with our students during the virtual reception that we'll be facilitating using breakout rooms. As Stephanie said, we hope that this is our first and last virtual idea bounce, so bear with us as we try to adapt what we would typically do in person to the online space. And so we want to appreciate you in advance for all of the grace that you'll give us as we work this out. For those of you who need to leave early, you'll have that one pager, and we hope you can connect with our students via email on any ideas and connections that you can help follow up with. Please utilize the chat to share any affirmations or suggestions directly to our students, and then we will connect again after their presentations. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with Emily, and then we'll go down through the list. Emily, and Genesis is going to help me with spotlighting.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I couldn't change my name, but I use she, her, hers pronouns. And thank you all for being here. So, 1/3 of Americans struggle with their mental health at some point in their life. But for me, hearing like a percentage or a fraction doesn't really click for me, so I'm going to restate that. 1 million Americans are going to struggle at some point in their life with mental health. Yet despite this incredibly large number, mental health is a topic that is incredibly stigmatized and therefore rarely talked about. This stigma that surrounds mental health dissuades so many individuals from seeking help. Only 36% of people that end up struggling with their mental health even seek treatment, and barely any of those actually see the treatment to completion. So there are countless consequences of this. We found that Americans with severe mental illnesses die an average of 25 years earlier than those without one. And as many of you probably know, suicide has become one of the leading causes of death, not just in the United States, but across the world. And so, while we need more mental health resources and we need to increase accessibility of these resources, we also have to realize that all of these resources aren't going to be utilized if people don't first feel comfortable with seeking help. Fortunately, there are ways to remove the stigma and to make people feel more comfortable, and that's done by normalizing mental health. So how do we do this? As someone that struggles with my own mental health, I can say that for me, whenever I've openly talked about it, I've been able to see an immediate impact on the others around me. It makes them feel more comfortable being vulnerable. It makes them feel more comfortable sharing what they're going through. And sometimes it's even led to conversations about them seeking mental health treatment. So this summer, I want to work in St. Louis with a local mental health organization to help include destigmatization in their outreach and care. Part of making these resources more accessible is done by helping people feel more comfortable using them. So we can do this by giving people a space where they feel comfortable being vulnerable, whether that means people like me are sharing their own experiences to show that it's normal, or through some other method. But overall, we know that by destigmatizing mental health, we're going to be making the world a safer place, and we're going to be saving lives. So, yeah. Not really sure what to do now, but I'm gonna go with it. You also may have noticed on my form, it says I wanted to look at 911 alternatives. Congress just passed a law a few days ago making that a thing, so I have a new idea now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Desirae. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm studying anthropology and sociology. So yeah, let's jump right into it. There are a total of 29 bus depots in New York City across all 5 boroughs. Although they're all spread around the city, having varying capacities and serve unique populations, the one thing that they all have in common is that they're all based in neighborhoods with the highest densities of minority populations. Some of these communities include East New York in Brooklyn, which has the highest concentration of housing projects in all of New York City, or Harlem in Manhattan, which is known for being home to a very large Black and brown population. You will never find a bus depot on the Upper East Side or in Soho. This disproportionate distribution of bus depots in New York City is not just a coincidence. However, it is not a large topic of discussion either. Are community members aware that the constant diesel exhaust emissions from buses in New York City is causing higher rates of asthma, COPD, and other respiratory issues? If community members are not aware of this, then how can we bring this to their attention? During my Civic Summer, I plan to understand individuals' awareness of disparities impacting the health of their communities through the use of photography. I hope to use images that I will take of physical disparities, such as the presence of bus depots and density of housing projects, to understand community knowledge of these larger systemic issues, and hopefully encourage community members to get involved with their community's efforts to mitigate the systemic violence that they see in their own neighborhoods. And that's it.
Okay, so I'm Sam Bernstein. I am from Sammamish, Washington. And if you know anything about me, you know that I love where I'm from. It's an amazing place, Washington State. It's also the second largest produce producing state in the country after California. And as a result, there are lots and lots of communities of farm workers. And so in the Skagit Valley, where my mother's family first moved when they came to the Pacific Northwest in '66, there exist a lot of communities that are on the margins, that are there as a result of H-2A visas, and don't really have access to quality, nutritious, culturally competent food. And so for my Civic Summer, I am thinking a lot about what I can do to ensure food equity for those farm working communities. You know, there are co-ops that exist in the Skagit Valley region, which is specifically where I'd like to do my project. But none of those co-ops actually have language services that are appropriate for the farm working communities that are there. It's estimated that 70% of those farm worker communities speak indigenous languages from the Mesoamerica region, and the remaining 30% speak Spanish. Now, I'm majoring in political science and Spanish, so I feel like this is a great way for me to integrate the two of those. Now, because the farm worker communities are mostly there on H-2A visas, they aren't protected by by federal food programs like SNAP that would ordinarily be there to fill in the gaps. And so I am thinking that I will be providing some language translation services for the co-ops that already exist, and or financial incentives for the farms that exist around the area to transport their imperfect foods to the farm working camps, so that people are able to eat healthy, nutritious foods and fix the disparity between people who are producing so much of our nation's food, yet they don't have quality food to eat. Yeah, that's my pitch for right now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Noor. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm a biology major doing a double minor in writing and the medical humanities. So a patient narrative is a story that a patient tells about their experience with illness. And this can be done in many different forms, graphic novels, poetry, documentaries, etc. If you look for patient narratives, the majority of sources you'll find will be produced by older adults. And while those works are valuable in informing the medical humanities and bridging the gap between patient and physician, there's a clear demographic that's missing, and that's youth. So 10 to 20 million children and adolescents in the US have some form of chronic illness or disability. And it's not unreasonable to assume that every child in the US has had some experience with illness, healthcare, or medicine at some point in their lives. And I personally believe that these stories are worth hearing. So I spent a whole summer shadowing in pediatrics and noticed there's usually somebody speaking for the patient, most of the time the parents. And I always wondered, how did the kid feel and what was their experience with illness like? And you might think there are tons of books and resources out there that tell us about children's experiences with illness, but they're usually for kids, about kids, written by adults. And I wonder if, because of that discrepancy, whether those works truly capture what it feels like to be a kid with chronic illness in the moment, not afterwards, reflecting on the experience as an adult. So with this in mind, I would like to use my Civic Summer to create a summer program for pediatric patients with chronic illness. And the goal of this program is to help young patients develop their own patient narratives about their experiences with illness, free from their parents, physicians, teachers, counselors, or anyone else that tries to define their experiences for them. And there are a lot of details to work out, such as curriculum, location, finding people to participate, and legalities, but I expect to use the Civic grant money to secure these details, as well as provide participants with any resource they might need so that the program is more accessible for them. And I hope to work with a local children's hospital so that by the end of the program, the patient narratives can be displayed at the hospital for other kids, parents, and physicians to see and appreciate. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Leighanne Guettler-James. I use she, her, hers pronouns. So as we know, the current system of criminal justice that we have in the United States has a serious issue with inequalities and inequities, and also a serious problem with recidivism rates. Studies show that juvenile justice recidivism rates as high as 80% in certain areas and similar levels across the board. As we can tell, there needs to be a change in the way that we approach juvenile offenders. Currently, there are many programs, including local ones, that operate with the intention of disrupting these issues. They are commonly referred to as deferral programs, as they offer an alternative to the traditional methods of retribution for juvenile offenses. While these programs are successful in often keeping children out of situations involving juvie and other punishments, there is some research that indicates an issue with the way they go about this. Tactics involving community service have been surmised by some researchers to have a part in a process that re-traumatizes children who have also already suffered communal and personal trauma and are now involved in the programs. This is why I propose creating a deferral program that makes use of concepts of mindfulness and positive psychology practices as a means of enriching the minds of children who have found themselves in these situations, in the hopes to help them develop some tools that may help them move out of a criminal justice system that is generally engineered to ensure their repeated return. Mindfulness is commonly defined as a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations, used as a therapeutic technique. And positive psychology is defined as a scientific study of the good life, or the positive aspects of the human experience that make life worth living. The discipline of positive psychology focuses on both individual and societal well-being. The construction of this program would include professional input from experts in the multitudinous fields that relate to mindfulness and positive psychology, and making use of any of their services that may be directly required for carrying out the development of these tools. I believe that by creating this programming and implementing it, we can impact the rates of recidivism that we see in juvenile justice and help disrupt this system of oppression by assisting children in developing some skills they may use to thrive.
Hello everyone, my name is Ramadan. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in education and I'm from Egypt. And there goes my pitch. So many factors play into educational success. So like socioeconomic status, parents' education, and race are one of too many factors that play into your GPA. And this leads to having students who could achieve higher than they are right now. And if it weren't for currently existing solutions like learning support systems, these problems that have been really exacerbated. So in WashU, for example, have RPMs, we have office hours, have PLTL. However, these systems have one major problem. They take a reactive approach to students. So they wait till the student fails in their first year, and then they identify the student as someone who is at risk of failure, and they provide them with the support they need. The problem is this is too late. By the time that you identify a student as at risk of failure, they could get into a slippery slope and start failing once and once again, or they could have not been able to maintain their GPA high enough, and it has affected their career opportunities and internships. Which is why my project is to try to make these learning support systems take a proactive approach to addressing this problem. So my Civic Summer will be a research project that aims to establish a mathematical model that predicts your future GPA as a function of background information like socioeconomic status, race, location, parents' education. So each student will fill out surveys and give information about their background, and the institution will run this program and try as much as possible to get a GPA for that student. And that way we can identify students who are at risk of failure before they enroll in that institution. So we can provide them with the support they need from day one. And this way they will not face the obstacle of having failed once when they apply for jobs, when they apply for opportunities and career internships. So yeah, so this is, so my mission is to have all the students in a place try to achieve their best, irrespective of their irrespective of their social determinants like socioeconomic status and race, and irrespective of their backgrounds. Yeah, that's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Akhil Kesaraju and I use he and his pronouns, and I'm studying microbiology and anthropology. So I guess to begin, the global spread of COVID-19 has led to over 30 million cases and nearly 1 million deaths around the world. And political leaders right now are repeatedly downplaying the severity of the pandemic in its early stages, and they also are now contributing to widespread infection across the country. And so as the number of these cases rise due to relaxed restrictions, states will likely be forced to reinforce restrictions and shutdowns on their businesses and restaurants. If life's to ever return to normal, it's essential that these restaurants and businesses play their part by enforcing effective protocols that reduce the possibility of virus transmission. This creates a large challenge because CDC and local guidelines are generalized to apply to businesses of any nature and do not really consider what the space looks like, the typical numbers of customers they serve, and what the business actually does, and more. Additionally, it's rather difficult to expect struggling small businesses to determine what specific health measures they can utilize to decrease virus transmission and interpret these guidelines in the context of the design and location of their space. Also, finding cost-efficient sources for items like partitions would be another challenge in and of itself. This is especially important, right, like during the winter when restaurants are, for example, cannot use outdoor seating as like a main source of generating money. And so to address this issue within St. Louis and potentially other communities, this proposal calls for the creation of Design Health STL, which is a group aiming to translate St. Louis and CDC COVID-19 guidelines into action by helping local restaurants and businesses adjust to public health standards. This group will utilize the expertise of health experts and business and finance experts, in addition to students, to create protocols specialized to each and every business that maximize the possibility of reducing virus transmission while increasing customer engagement. I would greatly appreciate any suggestions and support anyone has for this pressing issue. And currently we are actually conducting a survey in the South Grand area to understand the resources that local immigrant/refugee-owned restaurants have that could potentially lack those resources. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rohith Kesaraju. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am double majoring in neuroscience and urban studies. So as someone from Kentucky, a state facing the brunt of the opioid epidemic, I think it's no secret that substance abuse disorder is increasingly damaging American lives. Research has shown that drug-related overdose deaths have dramatically increased over the past several decades to now 72,000 deaths per year. The largest concentration of these deaths occur in the justice system, as a disproportionately high percentage of the incarcerated suffer from SUD. However, only 28% of people in prison with these disorders receive treatment in prison, and there is no standardized transfer of treatment when people leave prison. This lack of care has led to overdose being the leading cause of death among recent inmates, as 15% of recent inmate deaths were due to opioids and other drugs. I am proposing to develop a method of communication that reliably connects people who leave prison with an addictive disorder to medical and psychobehavioral therapy, as well as keeps them and their providers accountable in having long-term care and progress. Creating such a method would help recently incarcerated people with substance use disorder to consistently have access to treatment and care, closing the gap we see in transitional care across the country today. I would appreciate any feedback or any ideas as to how I could develop this method of communication or any input on my idea, but thank you so much.
Hey everyone, my name is Wyck. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm studying political science and psychology. Election after election, millennials and Gen Z voters turn out at sometimes dismally low rates. Many political pundits are quick to jump to the conclusion that young people simply don't care about politics, but this just is not true. The truth is that we need to make a concerted effort to prepare the minds of young people for the realities of democratic engagement today, particularly in non-election years. There's no question that the right to vote in the United States has been deliberately constricted by unfair laws, logistical barriers, and unequal access to clear and accurate information. Without significant preparation in advance to handle misinformation and voter suppression, voting is rendered nearly impossible, especially for those with no prior experience. Rather than judgment, we need support, compassion, and a fair chance at making our voices heard. That is precisely why, for my civic project, I'm looking to develop a curriculum for those coming of voting age, made by young people like them, teaching the defensive civic literacy skills necessary to navigate today's polarized political landscape. This looks like clarifying rules about how, when, and where to vote, and exposing the unnecessary restrictions put in place to make it more difficult. This looks like increasing access to clear, accurate, and unbiased information about the people who represent us in government. This looks like providing young people with the tools necessary to recognize when information is false or misleading. Rather than shaming young people for being apathetic or uninterested when it comes to political engagement, we should instead reflect on the aspects of our current systems that lead young would-be voters to become disenfranchised in the first place and empower them to overcome these barriers. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Lauren Loftis. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm majoring in anthropology. So your education is one of the biggest contributing factors to your health. and is also one of the biggest determinants in how you will live the rest of your life. As we all know, the quality of your elementary, middle, and high school education is varied based on where you live. As for me, I'm from Ferguson, a short 25-minute drive from WashU. I only know one other person who has gotten into WashU, and at this point, I recognize more of my Ferguson peers working in the BD cafeteria than I do being students. Now, I probably know what you all are thinking, especially if you paid attention to your local or even national news back in 2014. But Ferguson isn't how we were once represented on your television screens. This distinction that I'm making isn't to undermine where our faults and struggles lie within the community, and it also isn't to reduce the prevalence of racism in our city, but it is to tell you from firsthand experience that Ferguson is not accurately represented by your 5 o'clock breaking news story. I understand a school like WashU is hard for anyone to get into, but it shouldn't be impossible for the members of my community. But let's not take my personal narrative as truth. Let's look at some statistics. Of my local high school, 100% of the student body is eligible for free/reduced lunch, which means that the school is high poverty. In addition, this specific high school only graduates 81% of their senior class each year. If we compare these facts to national statistics given by College for America, only 51% of this graduating class will go to college. All of this means is that 41 out of every 100 kids that enter my local high school as freshmen will graduate from the school and then go to college. Let's not ignore the importance of trade schools, for which this statistic does not account for, but let's also not forget that college is slowly becoming more of a necessity for social and economic mobility. As I end my pitch, I finally want to talk about my intended Civic Summer. I am interested in how I can help high school age kids from my community go to college or to a trade school. I want to be able to provide resources for first-gen, low-income students that will help them navigate the daunting process of applying to colleges that they are undoubtedly qualified for. We are all here today because of the help and support of our surrounding networks, and I would like to extend my network to help those in my community. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sydney Otis. I'm studying sociology with minors in global health and environment and American culture studies, and I use she, her pronouns. Last spring, Washington University sent out a memo detailing its response to increased violence in and around the Del Mar Loop. Its solutions included an increased WashU Police Department presence in surrounding communities, but it did not include discussion on how that would impact community members, especially those not affiliated with the university. The memo discussed how campus transportation would be expanded so that students could easily and accessibly get to and from campus without having to wait outside for long, but there was no mention as to how this would affect St. Louis public transportation. The memo stressed the importance of keeping students and WashU affiliates safe, but what about the importance of addressing systemic factors to learn about the causes of the violence in the first place? While there was mention of community partners, who exactly are these individuals and how are these partnerships formed? For my Civic Summer, I want to analyze civic ethos at the institutional level, specifically Washington University's impact on surrounding St. Louis communities. Does WashU truly have a civic ethos? What does civic ethos and civic duty mean at the institutional level? This topic is incredibly important as institutions can be a system for social change. By analyzing WashU in St. Louis and seeing how we as an institution can become a Washington University for St. Louis, we can begin to positively impact the St. Louis community and effectively contribute to its long-term success. With a university name that uniquely situates itself within a complex racial history, is WashU neglecting its responsibility to care for the well-being of the individuals that call St. Louis home? To what extent does WashU consider broader societal concerns? Who are WashU's community partners and who do we listen to before making decisions? To what extent are surrounding communities considered in institutional decision-making? Does WashU consider how their actions will benefit or harm those around them, or are students and funders, the populations who flow money into the university, their primary concerns? I'm looking for your support so that we can work together to make immense positive change throughout the St. Louis community. By learning how institutions can work with community members instead of making decisions while neglecting to care of how others will be affected, institutions can harness their economic and political power for good and become more civically minded. This can be expanded outside of WashU, as other colleges and universities or other institutions more generally consider the impact they have on their community. Without recognition of the impacts of our behaviors and care for the voices of community members, we cannot expect to make true sustainable change. Together, we can all work towards bettering the community we call home.
Hi everyone, I'm Arianna Parkhideh, and I am really interested in reproductive healthcare and immigrant health. Access to reproductive healthcare and quality of care available to immigrants once it has been accessed is limited due to multiple factors: affordability, spatial inequalities, language barriers, cultural insensitivity, and reproductive racism. Specifically, Pregnant immigrants report feeling unsafe and unsupported during labor, experience prejudice from staff, and feel unfamiliar with healthcare systems in the United States. I want to learn more about the care and support that pregnant immigrants need in order to have a more comfortable prenatal, birthing, and postpartum experience. I also want to explore how reproductive racism, restrictive immigration policies, race, and class intersect when defining these experiences. Critically, I want to investigate these topics by using anthropological methods, qualitative research, and participant observation. By working directly with the community, I can develop the valuable communicative, listening, and critical self-reflective skills that I need to support my future career in community health. How do I want all of this to manifest in my Civic Summer? That is a great question, and I am open to suggestions, so please send them my way. Right now, I'm strongly considering becoming a trained doula and volunteering with organizations that provide low or no-cost doula services specifically for immigrant women. Doula support during labor has been linked to much better outcomes for mother and baby and fewer interventions during labor. And I want to learn how this model of support is specifically adapted to immigrant populations. I also want to learn how this model can be extended to promote maternal mental health and provide social support beyond the limits of labor and pregnancy. Of course, I am sure that over the course of the next year, or next semester, I guess at this point, my project will change. So I'm learning to value flexibility and uncertainty as a part of the process. Thank you all for listening. And please, if you have any tips, connections, I am open to learning about all of them.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I use she, her pronouns. So in my 21 years, I have never had a Black physician treat me. And as a Black woman who wants to pursue a career in medicine, I am hypersensitive to the lack of other Black women as medical providers. Black Americans comprise of 13% of the US population, yet Black women only represent 2% of physicians. In a pre-health summer program, I had the opportunity to do ride-alongs with FDNY. Out of the many paramedics I met, I only met one Black paramedic. The percentage of Black paramedics and EMTs mirrors that of Black physicians. On the collegiate EMS squad I am a part of, I am the only Black individual who serves as a crew leader. Dr. Ibram Kennedy said, individual behaviors can shape the success of individuals, but policies determine the success of groups. And it is racist power that creates the policies that cause racial inequity. Though working with policies within EMS is not my end career goal, I have a current interest in it, given my skills as an EMT. I see this work as an opportunity to learn what policies can help reverse the racial inequity we see amongst healthcare providers more broadly. EMS serves a diverse population. If the crew members who serve the community do not reflect the community members, it negatively impacts EMS service utilization, provider trust, and patient compliance. Many have tried to address the lack of diversity amongst crew members and crew leadership by addressing the implicit bias within squads. Cultural competency trainings and implicit bias trainings only go so far without actual policy changes. They do not address the problem at the core. I propose dismantling and rebuilding first responder structures and policies to analyze how current structures prevent EMS squads from being anti-racist organizations. What I learned from the EMS level, I hope to carry with me in my future endeavors throughout my healthcare career.
Hi, my name is Kai Radford, and I am an African-American Studies student. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Thank you. Did you hear that? I'm sorry, okay, good. Mental health has, until quite recently, been considered largely a white issue. In the media, those who were struggling with these problems and those who received proper care were predominantly white. However, while suicide attempts decreased overall among US adolescents between 1991 and 2017, they increased by 73% among Black adolescents, and this percentage has continued to rise over the pandemic. Mental health within communities of color is not the same as mental health within white spaces. There are social stresses and generational traumas that continuously impact people of color on a daily basis. Psychological distress for many Black Americans often go untreated and undiagnosed in comparison to their white counterparts. Even before the pandemic, many who sought treatment faced minimization of symptoms, stigmatization, and improper care. In addition to the stigma from external peoples, Black individuals with mental illness also face stigmas within their own communities, especially as young adults. Comments such as "don't be a punk," "don't talk about your feelings," and "keep it to yourself" are commonplace, making it outstandingly difficult for experiences to feel validated. Coupled with social factors such as financial insecurity and the massive loss of Black lives over the summer due to police brutality and COVID, Black youth have found themselves nationally ignored. I myself have been struggling with my own mental illness for over 10 years, and when left untreated, I was faced with disastrous repercussions. Fortunately, through self-advocacy, a supportive family, and through research, I was able to get the help that I need. However, I have an abundance of resources due to my status as a WashU student. Not every person that looks like me has this luxury. Yet, an outstanding amount of Black young adults are in need of that attention. With my project, I hope to improve access and reduce stigma surrounding seeking mental health treatment for Black girls, especially through partnering with a local organization, because I believe everyone has the right to feel good in their own skin. Thank you. And during the breakout sessions, I'm really excited to meet and talk to you all.
Hi, my name is Josh Valeri. I use him, his pronouns, and I'm an environmental bio and comparative arts major. So according to a recent report by WashU's Interdisciplinary Environmental Clinic, Black St. Louisans are exposed to considerably greater environmental risks than white residents, contributing to stark racial disparities regarding health, economic, and quality of life burdens. Among these environmental risks, the report shows, are air pollution, lead poisoning, limited access to healthy food, and illegal trash dumping, all of which are experienced disproportionately in communities of color. Clearly, environmental racism is an enormous problem in St. Louis. As an environmental biology major, I want to see what I can do to help address this problem. As a civic scholar, I know that it is crucial that whatever I do to help address this problem, I do it in close collaboration with the communities who are experiencing environmental racism. This is why, for my Civic Summer project, I hope to work with the Metropolitan Congregations United to help develop a community-based approach to combating issues of environmental racism in St. Louis. According to its website, Metropolitan Congregations United is a community organization that brings together religious congregations, community groups, and individuals to work for a common purpose to create a better life for all members of the St. Louis region. After researching this organization further, I found that a community organizer for this organization named Emmeline Giles is using this multi-congregational approach to help spearhead a local environmental justice movement with clergy leaders around St. Louis. As someone who grew up in a family where our church community was very important to us, I know how vital religious organizations can be in forming the sort of tight-knit networks that are vital for political change. For this reason, I hope to work with Metropolitan Congregations United to help combat environmental racism in St. Louis this summer. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Helen. I'm a poli-sci major from London. And my talk's going to be about juvenile justice. So on any given day, over 43,000 youths in the US are confined in juvenile facilities, away from home and caught up in the juvenile justice system. Nearly 1 in 3 of these kids are under 16 years old. At this early, crucial stage in their academic and personal development, some of the most vulnerable children in our society are being locked up and left behind. With a disproportionate number of these kids being African American, this is an issue of racial equity, health equity, and justice. Youth in detention centers report receiving insufficient behavioral health services, such as substance abuse treatment, and less educational support, such as job training. These are services that are vital for their holistic well-being, playing a vital role in improving their life chances once they leave the system. And jail diversion opportunities that feature these services also prevent vulnerable children from entering juvenile detention centers in the first place. So how does one junior summer fit into all of this? Scaling down to our local community, my overall goal is to contribute to work that improves the juvenile justice system's provision of holistic well-being services, focusing on education and/or behavioral health services. To do this, I plan on pursuing 1 of 2 ideas this summer, but I'm open to changing them. So one, producing a research paper that compares the impacts of different states' policies regarding holistic well-being in juvenile detention centers, and then using my findings to formulate some policy proposals for Missouri. Or two, contributing to the incredible work of a St. Louis-based organization that provides education and/or behavioral health-based services, be it through for diversion opportunities or programs for those who are already confined in juvenile facilities. The scale and systemic nature of this problem means that one summer project definitely won't solve it all. However, by focusing on the St. Louis youth that interact with the juvenile justice system, I hope to invest my time and funding in improving their access to holistic well-being services, from education to behavioral health care. Too often these kids are locked up and left behind. Holistic well-being services can give them a second chance and a brighter future. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm from Nanjing, China. I'm a psychology major student. My feet ache, my stomach burns, my palms sweat. All the nearby noises fade away, and the dorm floor caught me with a resounding bang. That's my genuine body reaction after 2 months of trying so hard to lose weight. And that's also the starting point why I want to launch a civic project related to body positivity. When I returned to China from US during the first ever winter break, my friends, parents, and high school teachers all commented about my weight gain. I began to be increasingly dissatisfied with my body size. So the semester back was filled with high-intensity workouts, constantly skipping meals, and many side effects. My periods stopped, my hair fell out in clumps. As an international student, struggling with language barriers, it's so tough to express my pain and sorrow wholeheartedly to a campus therapist without using my native language. My parents, back in China, invested tremendous time and money for my education, which pressured me to not concern them. I was also too ashamed to share this experience with anyone, even with my friends, as I was afraid to be socially isolated or considered abnormal. This is why I like to campaign for the international students who feel so uncomfortable to get mental health services. According to a study on college students' attitudes on counseling, just 56% of international students knew the existence of mental health services, versus 79% of domestic students. Among those international students who were aware of it, they were also less likely to actually talk to the campus therapist. Thus, this body positivity campaign will aim at connecting international students with on-campus mental health services, establishing positive body image, and introducing self-care tips. By combating against body shame, I hope to reduce body dissatisfaction, negative mood, and social stigma. Yeah, thank you all for listening, and I look forward to any suggestion or tips later on.
Thank you to all of our students, and thank you to our guests for coming. I hope that you heard something that you thought, I could really connect with that, know someone who this person can talk to. This is a great resource that I have, and hold that while we move into the breakout spaces for our reception. Before we do that, I am so excited to introduce Bob Virgil, who is Trustee Emeritus, Dean Emeritus of Olin, one of Gephardt Institute's greatest champions and one of our longest standing supporters of the Civic Scholars program from its very inception 10 years ago. So Bob is with us today, and we invited him to offer a few words because I always think, Bob always has such great wisdom to share and impart, and to motivate our students for the change that they're hoping to see through. So Bob, I'm going to spotlight you and invite you to unmute yourself to share a few words with our audience.
I think the first thing I'd like to do is to commend Teresa, Stephanie, and your colleagues in the in the Gephardt Institute for the great job you're doing in keeping the Civic Scholars program going during this COVID time. I've participated in several of these idea bounces. And frankly, I don't see a whole lot of difference between this one and previous ones, which suggests that, Teresa, you and your colleagues and the staff have adapted to these conditions and have kept this great program going in the same way. And I commend you all for that. I commend all of you civic scholars. I wonder if you appreciate how selective and selected you are. I think there's some 14 or 15 of you. Is that right, Teresa?
We have 17 students. We have 17 civic scholars this year.
I was trying to keep track as we went through. So you're 17 or so students. Your class when it entered Washington University was probably about 1,700 students. So you're 1% of your class. And that's very selective. I think what distinguishes you is you're taking leadership. You've all honed in on a major problem, a major challenge facing society and our cities and our citizens. And you have the courage to take it on, to do the hard work of understanding it and coming up with solutions. And that's what leaders do. And not everyone is equipped to do that. My observation of people who take leadership is they continue that throughout your lives. So all of you are going to go on to be leaders in your fields and in whatever you do. And this really is what civic scholars do and what civic scholars is intended. As I listen to your proposals, I was impressed by a number of things. First of all, the scope and the breadth of your proposals. All the way from things that are specific to Washington University to things that affect every country in the world. I'm impressed too by how many of you started off by saying, I major in such and such, and I want to draw on my majors as I go forward as a civic scholar. And I think that's great. I'm impressed by the magnitude and the complexity of all of the problems you want to address. And I want to say a couple of things to you in that regard. One would be a suggestion on how to proceed. But the first thing I want to say is, I know you'd like to solve the entire problem, but you're not going to. It's too big and it's too complex, and there's too many pieces to it. And if you start off by thinking you're going to solve the whole thing, you're not going to do it, and you're going to be unsatisfied. So I think, number one, realize that. Number two, set as an objective for, let's say, between now and the end of the spring semester, the following. You're going to winnow. You're starting with this big, huge, complex, complicated, intractable challenge. Now, starting there, set your mind that by the end of the spring semester, when you go into your summer project, you want to winnow down to something more specific. A more specific aspect of the big problem. And what your footprint is going to be from your Civic Scholar project is you're going to go to work on this specific part of it. You're going to understand it, and you're going to come up with concrete recommendations for resolving that part of it. And that's what your footprint is going to be from the Civic Scholars. So my suggestion would be is to look upon your next 4 or 5 months as a process of winnowing. You're going to winnow down to something very specific within the area you study, and you're going to come up with concrete resolution recommendations to solve that problem. And that's what your footprint is going to be. I just close by saying I'm so impressed by all of you. I've been a champion of Civic Scholars. I think it's a great program, and you all are just evidence of that. You make me proud to be part of Washington University, and I look forward over the next year or so to learning more about your project and your results, and hearing about the footprint I know you all are going to leave. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Bob. And I want to say we appreciate so much the support that you've given to our scholars and the Institute over the years. We have two Civic Scholars, Jerry and Bob Virgil Civic Scholars who are with us today. Ruth Durrell, who graduated just this spring, Andrew Whitaker, who will graduate soon, one of our seniors. So hope that they will be able to connect with you briefly, and thank you for all that you've done. For the evening. Again, I just want to thank you all for coming and supporting our students. Hopefully, I know you were in one room, but if there were others that you wanted to connect to and share any resources, any connections, thoughts that you have their information, please reach out to our students. They would love to hear from you. They are really hungry for the feedback, the opportunity to broaden the way that they're thinking, and then doing that narrowing that Bob mentioned in his remarks. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful evening. Appreciate you all spending time with us tonight. Take care, everyone.